think of this for a moment. All that's required to put the science of getting rich to work in your life is a decision. Now, you know, most people will look at that and they'll say there's got to be more to it than that. How many of you have been trying to earn a lot of money for quite a long time? How many have difficulty at it? You know, 1% of the population earn about 95 or 96% of all the money that's being earned. And it's a subject that is not taught in school. And when someone comes along and tells you all you have to do is make a decision, we have a difficult time buying into it because we probably worked fairly hard attempting to earn money. Now, I stumbled on this information around 43 years ago. I have been absolutely fascinated with it ever since. It takes up all my days. Some people ask me, what are your hobbies? Just studying this subject. That's all I do. And I have worked all over the world with this, and it doesn't really matter where you go. You can go into different countries, into different cultures. When you get past the culture, people are essentially the same. And I think we all want generally much the same thing. I had a man sit down with me in 1961, and he put an R on the sheet of paper just like what you're looking at there. Then he put 3 letters down beside it. And he said, Bob, let that represent happiness, health, and wealth. And then he asked me if I thought he was a happy guy. I said, yeah, he seemed pretty happy to me, and he did. He said, have you ever seen me when I was sick? And I had to admit I hadn't. He said, have you ever seen me when I was broke? And again, I had to admit I hadn't. Well, he said, you've got to be one of the most miserable people that I've ever met. And I was an unhappy guy. I was 26. As I look back at it, I think I was an unhappy kid that just grew up and stayed that way. And I believe a lot of people live that way. There's a lot of unhappy people around. I didn't have a terminal illness, but I always had a cold or a headache or a backache or something. And when it came to money, I mean, I had a problem. You see, as he said to me, he says, you're striking out in all of these areas. I was actually earning $4,000 a year at the time, and I owed $6,000. Now, you know, that's not an uncommon position for a person to be in. If I took everything I earned for 18 months, nothing to live on, and just paid debt, I would have just broken even. So when you look at that, you know, there's not a lot of hope. I don't think I ever thought I'd get out of debt. It never entered my mind that I could. I never really thought of earning a lot of money. I was just trying to keep the wolf away from the door. You know, the phone would ring every day, tell them I'm not there, you know, or where's the money? And hell, I thought, if I knew where the money was, you wouldn't have to phone me. This was a constant problem. I have often said that you'll be absolutely amazed how much free time you have when you never have to think about money. Do you know that people spend an enormous amount of time thinking about money if they haven't got it? Now, if you have got it, it's a totally different story. And I really believed, I was raised with the idea, if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. If you're going to earn a lot of money, you have to have a great education. You have to have a lot of experience. But that's not what this man told me. Now, that's the man that I sat down with. His name was Raymond Douglas Denford. Now, he's been gone for a long time. He really woke me up. He asked me some good questions, and he got me thinking. Now, this is the one thing he asked me. He said, or suggested, and I found this in a book by Vince Rowazi over here in Philadelphia. He said, to change your life, you have to change your life. Now, that sounds like a play on words. It did to me the first time I looked at it, but that's not a play on words. That is so basic, and it's so misunderstood. Now, we're going to go through 2 parts here. I understand there's a break, so we're going to go to a certain point in the break, and I'm going to share some ideas with you on what can be done. And then after the break, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, because it's an inside job. And we're forever trying to change things outside, and that's not where it's at. We keep gathering information, and it doesn't do it. I would imagine that most of you have been to a lot of seminars. I would imagine that most of you have a pretty fair collection of self-help material, books and CDs. Michael was talking about people come into these all the time. And I said, well, that's the way I am. I've been coming to them. I'm a seminar junkie, and I've been that way for 40-some years. And I just can't seem to get enough of it. I think once we get hooked on the idea of developing ourselves, we never get away from it. And the people that are not hooked on the idea, they think we're a little crazy. But I wouldn't want to live in the world they're living in. You know, back in 1970, I had the pleasure of being on a program in Chicago with just an incredible man. He wrote a book called The True Believer, Eric Hoffer. And he said something on that program that stuck in my mind. He said, in times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with the world that no longer exists. Now run that through your mind for a couple of minutes. In times of change, the learners will inherit the earth. I took that to be metaphorical, that we'll be happy, healthy, and prosperous. While the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with the world that no longer exists. You see, there's no such thing as a learned individual. There's no such thing as an educated individual. That's a misnomer. We're either learning or we're not. Napoleon Hill talks about education coming from the Latin educo, meaning to induce, to develop, or to draw out from within. So you see, we don't even have to get anything. As we really start to understand what makes everything happen, we're going to find out that we've already got everything we need. It's simply a matter of becoming aware of it. And so Ray suggested this to me, and then he introduced me to the book. Now, the book was Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. I have never stopped reading this book. The book that I carry with me, I've been carrying since 1963, and I read it every day. Now, I think Hubbard pointed out that when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. Yeah, you see, it's the repetition of the right information that'll really alter what's going on inside, and that's what you have to do. Everybody thinks it's something outside we have to change. We have to change companies, we have to change cities, we have to change jobs. You got to change it inside. If you don't change it inside, nothing happens. Well, I got into that book, and I started to study. Now, he said there's a secret in that book. And he said, if you find a secret in the book, you can have anything you seriously want. Well, I thought that was a gross exaggeration. You know, you can have anything you want. Let me put it in proper perspective for you. I was 26. I had 2 months high school formal education. I had no business experience. I had an absolutely terrible work record. And here I'm reading that you can have anything you want. Now, there's so much about ourselves that we don't know. And as I started to read this book, he said, there's a secret. You can give anything you want if you find the secret. Well, that was sort of like trying to sell me on the tooth fairy. And of course, I was 26, and I thought it was pretty cool. I was wide awake, you know. And actually, I was in a deep hypnotic trance. And I was ready to reject it. But Ray said to me, he said, listen. He said, you're not very happy. He said, you're not the healthiest guy in town. You're always broke. Now, he said, I found out something about money. And he pulled out a big wad of money. He always carried a lot of money. And I was always fascinated with that because I never had any. But at any rate, he said, this stuff can't talk, but it can hear. And he said, if you call it, it'll come. And I thought, God, you know, that's sort of a nice idea. You know, and I was ready to start hollering for it. But he said, you've got to understand how to get it. And he said, you obviously don't understand. Now, he said, the author of this book studied the lives of 500 of the world's most successful people, his entire life. Then he put it in this book. Now, he said, I'm inclined to think that he knows something that you don't know. Well, I think he just sort of put me in my place. You see? And so I started to read the book. And I found the secret. And the secret was so basic and simple, everything changed. You know, a year later, I was earning $175,000 a year, and then I took it over $1 million a year. I mean, I had money coming in from all over the place. And it happened so fast. Yeah, but he said that in the book. He said, when money starts coming, it'll come so fast and so furious that you're going to wonder where it's been hiding through all those lean years. Well, boy, I thought this is it. You know, I had it coming in from different countries, from different cities. And somebody will say, well, what were you doing? I don't think it matters what you're doing. I think what matters is how you're doing it. Do you see, Wallace Wattles wrote a book on the science of getting rich way back in 1903. He said, you don't get rich by doing certain things. You get rich by doing things in a certain way. And I thought, Yes, you could find two people doing exactly the same thing, and you couldn't see the difference. But one's doing it a certain way, the other isn't. It has to do with intent. It has to do with the energy that you're doing it with. You see, we're taught to be good little go-getters. Go-getters lose. They blow it. We want to be good little go-givers because the law says what you put out will come back. The universe will reward you by law. This is all very scientific. Yet it happens with every person every time. Now, I found the secret, and it was pretty basic. It was simply sit down, decide what you want, write it on a card, carry the card in your pocket, and read it as often as possible every day. So I wrote on the card that I want to have in my possession by New Year's Day of 1970. I gave myself a decade to do this deal. And $25,000. I really didn't believe it would happen. But you know something? I kept reading. I don't know why, but I kept reading. And I did exactly what the author said. I kept reading the card. And I kept reading it, and I kept reading it. Now, because I kept reading it, I started to think of earning money. Prior to that, I was thinking of debt. If you had asked me, I would have said I was thinking of earning money. I wasn't. I was thinking of debt. If your goal is to get out of debt, I guarantee you'll probably be in debt till you die. Because we become what we think about. Yet whatever you think about, you attract. You literally magnetize yourself to it. That's all I was ever thinking about was debt. But I started to think of earning money. Somebody said there's good money cleaning floors. So I said, I'm not proud. I'll clean floors. Well, I started to clean one office. Then I got another one. Do you know in less than 5 years, I was cleaning offices in Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Cleveland, Atlanta, London, England. The thing took off like a rocket. Now, what really changed? I think something inside shifted, but I didn't know what it was. And I bought this book and I was giving it to everybody. And nothing happened in their life. Then I got into Earl Nightingale's condensed narration of the book. And I would drive around with a portable battery-operated record player, and I would keep playing that record over and over and over again. And everybody was starting to wonder about me. Proctor's listening to this guy talk to him, and he's saying the same thing because it's on a record. I mean, he doesn't change the story. And I'm listening to this, and I'm reading the same book. I was starting to wonder about myself. But everything just kept changing, kept changing, kept changing. And I'd give the record to people, and I'd give the book to people, and nothing happened. So I reasoned that someone had to know why I changed, and they've either written it in a book or they're talking about it. So I made up my mind I would read every book that was ever written if I had to, and I was going to find out what happened to me. And I have never stopped studying. Now, some of what I found out, I'm going to share with you. And since Michael is trapping this on a DVD, you'd be wise to get it and watch it over and over and over again. No, seriously, because what I'm going to share with you is probably the most valuable information you could ever lay your hands on. And I often mention I've got license to brag about everything I talk about because none of it's mine. I have just gathered this information from some of the wisest people in the world, and I have been absolutely obsessed with trying to figure out why we do what we do. And, of course, you don't even have to be too quick. If you study the same thing for 40, 50 years, I mean, you're going to start to learn something about it. So that's what we're talking about. Now, I want to suggest that you make up your mind you're going to get in what we call a success zone. It's a way of thinking. Now, get this. If 95, 96% of the population are blowing it, if 1% of the population are earning about 95% of all the money, you're not going to get a whole lot of people agree with what you're doing. Most people are going to look at you kind of strange. What are you going there for? You went there last month. What are you listening to that for? You listened to that before. What are you reading? What do you read the same book over and over for? They don't understand. And you see, they're advertising their ignorance by the questions they ask. When we get into the success zone, everything in our life starts to change. But understand this, you're going to be a bit of an odd. You're out of the box. You're not one of the masses. And when you get out of the box, your whole world starts to shift. So as we go through this, let's think.